Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more home defense testing, and today we've got a new load that we've never tested on the channel before, and I don't even think we've tested anything across the board. Home defense, hunting, doesn't really matter when it comes to this particular name brand. So I legitimately have no idea how these are going to perform, but we're definitely going to put them through their paces and find out what they're capable of today. But as for the shells we're going to run today, I picked up some of the Barnes Defense buckshot loads. They are a 12 gauge, 3-inch, 15 pellet load of double buck, moving about 12-25 feet per second. So definitely a pretty stout shell for a home defense oriented load. I personally don't really think you need a 3-inch 15 pellet at 12-25 for your typical defensive range stuff. It's probably a little bit excessive and probably a little more recoil than you need to deal with as well. But hey, some people like the best they can get, and these might be it, considering they're a Barnes shell. I've never tested any Barnes shotgun shells at all, so I have no idea what we're going to get out of these, but I know they were not the cheapest. These were, I believe, $18 and change or something for a 5-round box, so they better be some very nice performers at that kind of price, because you definitely don't need to spend that much for a defensive shell, that's for sure. But we'll see what they can do. And as for the shotgun we're going to run them through, I brought out the classic Remington 870 with an 18.5-inch cylinder bore barrel, so no choke at all, just your bare bones 870, probably one of the most common home defense style shotgun setups that you can get. So we're really going to see how these can do through no choke at all in your typical home defense type of scenario, and if these are actually worth it or not. So as for today's test, we're going to take 5 shots, moving from 7 to 25 yards. So we're going to shoot at 7, 10, 15, 20, and 25. That should give us a very good idea for your average home defense scenario, what these are capable of. Any closer than that, and it's going to put everything in one giant hole. And any farther than that, and you start to tote the line a little bit on the kind of self-defense claim for certain scenarios and stuff like that. So 7 to 25 should be about perfect for our testing. And of course, all of our shots will be through the chrono as well, so we can see what kind of velocities we're pushing from this shorter barrel. So let's head over here to our targets. We'll take all of our shots, look at our chrono, and then look at our results. I don't know how good these are going to pattern, but let's see what we can actually get for a home defense type of pattern from them. Alright, so let's take a quick peek through our velocities here before we go check out our targets. The boss claim was 1225, but we do have an 18.5-inch barrel, and we did not see that claim. So clearly they were using something else other than a short defensive style barrel. Maybe a 20, 22, 24, something like that, I don't know. But we had 1089, 1093, 1089 again, 1104, and 1120 for an average of 1,099. So pretty well call it right at 1,100. It's 125 under their claim. Still more than enough for a home defense scenario, don't get me wrong, but you do still have the extra recoil of a 15 pellet load in a 3-inch shell. That is probably a little bit unnecessary for a lot of people's scenarios, but it's there, so I have to mention it to you guys because that is a factor here with these. But let's go check out our targets and see what kind of a pattern they gave us. Alright, so now let's take a peek at our actual targets and see how they patterned, because we definitely got some interesting results here. So first up, we'll start over here on the right with our 7-yard target. We had all 15 pellets hit the paper, and the farthest 2 points across gave us a 9.5-inch spread. You clearly would have covered most of his chest area, and that was immediately rather surprising to me, considering how expensive these are and that these are a defensive-oriented loading, to have that kind of a spread. Now yes, it is an even spread of pellets, but most defensive-oriented loadings prefer to give you a nice tight pattern. And at 7 and 10 yards, it's usually, you know, between a golf ball and a baseball size spread. That is not at all what we saw here. This is absolutely a shell that's going to be for the person that prefers a little more larger of a spread, more even spread of pellets, and gives them a little more wiggle room, which can kind of be 50-50. Some people prefer that. Some people want their nice tight groups. But moving over to our 10-yard spread over here, we did open it it up a little bit, all 15 pellets still on the paper, and we had a 13-inch spread at 10 yards. So as you can clearly see there, it's a pretty wide spread of pellets. I mean, that is easily up close and personal in the same room, and you're going to be covering them when shot. Now, that is all good, great, and fine for this scenario here, where it's up close and personal, but that is absolutely going to play a factor as we get out to longer ranges, with our spread opening up a large amount. Now, we did have a couple strikes. There's one down there in the middle, and a couple small little ones you can barely see up here around the head of that right target. Those are probably some sort of a gas seal that actually hit the paper, because these apparently don't have a wad. I've looked the entire range, and we have no wads to speak of at all, which is another rather interesting thing for a home defense style load. But now we'll move over here to our 15-yard target with Mr. Living Room Larry. You know, 15 yards, roughly on the other side of an average size living room. You still would have absolutely covered him in pellets, no question about it. Our farthest 2 points across are from top to bottom, and it gave us a 21 3/4 inch spread. So you can very clearly see we're opening that pattern up very quickly here. Still more than good enough for a home defense scenario, but you're really going to have to start paying attention if you've got somebody else standing behind him or close to him or something like that that you don't want to hit, because that spread right there is about the size of the average torso. Now we'll move over here to our 20-yard target with Mr. Package Thief Paul here, that's just stolen the Amazon packages and is jumping off the porch steps down onto the sidewalk. And we still kept all 15 pellets on the paper, but our farthest 2 points across is left to right there, and that gave us a 27-inch spread. You can clearly see that, yeah, you still covered him in pellets, but you've got a bunch of them up there around the shoulders and off to the side of him and stuff like that, so you're gonna start hitting things that you may not want to hit when it comes down to it, which is not always a good thing or something that you want in your home defense load. I would definitely prefer it a little bit tighter than that. At closer ranges, sure, the leeway is fine, but out here, this looks more like a pretty cheap, much more basic oriented shell going through a cylinder bore choke with that kind of a spread. And now moving over here to our 25-yard pattern with Driveway Dave that's trying to break into the Silverado. We still kept all 15 pellets on the paper, but we really opened it up. From bottom all the way up to the top there is our farthest spread across, and that's 35 inches. Still had multiple pellets through the center of the chest cavity, but you had just as many outside of them as well. So really, for me, 20 yards and in is probably about the limit for these. This is starting to get a lot larger than what I would like to have in a home defense style load, and that surprises me. Kind of seems like we're paying for the barn's name a little bit on this one. I thought we were going to see a much better pattern from these shells, or at least a much tighter pattern. Sure, it holds a pretty even spread of pellets across the papers, but it's just a little bit more broad than what I would personally like to see. Now, some people are going to really like that kind of a spread. It's going to give them a little more wiggle room in crunch time scenario, but for me, I want to hit what I'm aiming at. I don't really want pellets scattering all around the target necessarily. So kind of a mixed bag here today. You've got a shell that's pretty expensive with the barn's name attached to it that doesn't seem to have a wad in it at all to control their pellets. It's a 3-inch 15 pellet load, so you've got extra recoil to deal with over a much lower recoil, smaller shell, 2 3/4 shell, something like that, and a much broader spread. So kind of a little bit of a mixed bag. Some people are going to like it, some people really aren't, and that kind of surprised me. I thought we were going to have a much better pattern or a much tighter pattern out of these shells, to be honest with you, with that kind of a name brand. But that's why we test things to see what's good and what's not, because even sometimes the expensive stuff doesn't perform how you want it to. Alright y'all, well, what do you think about these results right here? Definitely a little bit interesting, and I'm pretty surprised about it. I figured with the price at like $18-ish for a box of 5, and the barn's name, with them being a defense loading, we would see, you know, kind of sort of flight control or Hornady critical defense type of territory with our patterns. I didn't really expect them to have any kind of a special wad in them necessarily, but I expected something to control our pellets a little more than that, and to my surprise, that's not what we've got. It appears like these are just a basic load of 15 pellet double-aught with a gas seal underneath of them. So you've got extra noise, extra recoil, and a much larger spread than some of those other options that I just mentioned. Probably not going to be my preferred load. So a lot of little detractors here adding up to something to where I would probably just lean more towards a Federal Flight Control or a Hornady critical defense load. They've got lower recoil, you can find them for cheaper, and they give you better patterns. But they do have less pellets, and they do give you a tighter pattern, which some people may not prefer. So to each their own, but leave all your thoughts down below. Is Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these Barnes Defense buckshot loads, and if so, what kind of results have you seen? Is that a shell that you would ever use for a home defense setup with these kind of patterns and stuff? Or would you prefer them to be a little bit tighter, a little less recoil and stuff like that? And potentially, depending on the shotgun as well, now that I think about it, you may lose one shell of capacity with them being a 3-inch as well, depending on how your magazine tube is set up. So are these something that you would actually use or not? And what other defensive oriented buckshot shells do you want to see us run through that 870? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All the information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.